I was telling the others, we are kind of doing an extension on our last unit. So we finished the last unit last week. You guys should have taken your test. If you have not, I think most of us have taken our test in this class. But if you have not, you need to make sure you do that by the end of today. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about recessive and dominant traits. So we're going to explore how we came to understand genetic inheritance through Mendel's P's. Right? And then you guys are going to be able to identify some dominant recessive traits. And then we're going to look at Mendel's P plants at the end. So go ahead, go into modules. You're going to see a dominant and recessive traits Google assignment. All right, we don't have an exit slip. We don't have a weekly check-in. We shouldn't have any kind of homework. Nothing amplified. This is the only thing that you need to submit today. All right, so make sure you're paying attention. You can get this done by or before the end of class. All right, so we're going to be on this Google assignment, and it will look like this when you open it. So first things first, we're going to watch a video to learn some more about what dominant and recessive traits are. We talked a little bit about it when we were looking at the unit a few weeks ago, but we didn't really cover it or hit on it very hard. So here we have some tables showing some dominant and recessive traits. We're going to fill out this yellow table, and then after that we're going to watch a video on Mendel's pea plants. And so when I say pea plants, I mean the peas that you eat. I don't know if any of you guys like peas, but we're talking about the pea plants. Mendel is a scientist, and he helped us understand genetics a little bit more by using these pea plants. And then after that, after you watch that video, well, I'm going to show the video. You have 6 questions down here that you're going to answer. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you guys this video on dominant and recessive traits.
This is the Everyday Sling by Pete Design, and this is the Everyday Sling by Anthony.
All right, so I'm going to pause it right here. Make sure you read this. A dominant trait overpowers a recessive trait. A dominant trait overpowers a recessive trait. All right, pause it again. Recessive traits. One second. Recessive traits are only outwardly obvious when no dominant gene is present. So if you take that dominant gene away, recessive traits are only outwardly obvious when no dominant gene is present. And so I'm going to give one example. Having brown eyes is a dominant trait. So if you have brown eyes, it's dominant. Right? I have blue eyes, so I have a recessive trait. And so we know that's recessive because of studies that we've done, but that is outwardly obvious. So you can see my eye color. Right? So recessive traits are only outwardly obvious when no dominant trait is present. Right? One more thing before we get into some examples. Just because a trait is dominant doesn't mean it is common. All right, just because a trait is dominant doesn't mean that it's common. So some of these next examples we're going to go through, I'm going to stop the video at these examples and ask you which one you think is dominant. So make sure you are responding in the chat. So we'll have a few, and then we will do the table on our Google Doc. All right, so this one is folding your right thumb over your left or folding your left over your right. So put your hands together, interlock your fingers. All right, you may have left over right, you may have right over left, but which one do you think is dominant? Which one do you think is a dominant trait? Go ahead and respond in the chat, left over right or right over left. Okay, I see left over right, right over left, right over left, right over left. If I'm looking at mine is a left over right. And I don't know if this has to do with like which hand you write with or which hand you're dominant with. All right, make sure you're responding in the chat. Which one do you think is dominant? So we're going to do these with the next few examples. We've got about 6, maybe 7 examples. All right, I'm seeing a lot of right over left. And let's check it out. Left over right is dominant. Now, this one is rolling your tongue. Can you do this with your tongue? So either you can't roll your tongue or you can. Which one do you think is dominant? I can't do it, and I really don't want to look in the my little Zoom box and look all funny doing it. All right, so can't. We're all over the place on this one.
It has to do with like your muscles and stuff like it's dumb.
It's really weird. I can't do it like whatsoever. All right, so kind of all over the board on this one. Let's see which one's dominant. Rolling your tongue is dominant. All right, tall stature or short stature? Tall stature or short stature? Remember, it's not always the most common one. It's not always the most common one. And I'm not saying this to trick you up, because some people may think like, oh, we have more tall people in the world, I guess that's dominant. Or we have more short people in the world, I guess that's dominant. All right. So we got short, tall, short.
I really hope it's short so when people are like, sure, I can go, well, I'm more dominant than you.
I like that. I like that. Let's see. There you go, Katie. All right. This one's kind of weird because I feel like it has to do a lot more with like male, female kind of thing. Like guys have more hair on their arms, on their body, and women don't have as much. All right. So which one do we think is dominant? Okay, Lexi says more hair, less question mark, less. Katie thinks more hair. It was interesting to see some of these when I first watched this video. Michelle says more hair, more hair. All right, let's check it out. Lots of body hair. All right, so musical ability or tone deafness. What do we think? Musical ability or tone deafness? I know that one was kind of hard to listen to. All right, which one do we think is dominant? What trait? Okay, so I got 2 tone deafness, 2 musical ability, another musical ability. All right, so kind of 50-50 on this. Let's look. Tone deafness. All right, so being nearsighted or farsighted. Nearsighted or farsighted. Nearsighted means you can see close up and not far away. Farsighted means you can see far away but not close up. I'm nearsighted. I gotta wear contacts in order to see street signs. Okay, I'm seeing more nearsighted than farsighted. Let's see. Ooh, farsighted. Whoever said that was correct. All right, so susceptible to migraines or not susceptible to migraines. So either you get migraines pretty easily, very often. The other one is not susceptible, so you don't get them very often or very easily.
I take medicine so I don't get migraines because for like years of my life I got them every single day.
That stinks. All right, so I'm seeing 3 susceptible to migraines. All right, let's take a look. Almost done with this video. You would be correct. All right, here's the last one. 5 fingers or 6 fingers? Which one is dominant? Which one is dominant? I got 5, 5, 6, 5,
Which
6,
one?
6, 6,
Right on
5.
the last one. It like lagged really bad for me.
What'd you say, Katie? What lag?
The video on the last one, which one was right?
Susceptible to migraines.
Also, it's such a bad Photoshop job. It's so bad.
Oh, that really is. I just noticed that. That's pretty funny. All right, so we got some few people saying 6 fingers, some people saying 5 fingers. Let's look up. 6 fingers is dominant, which is kind of cool but kind of weird, right? All right, so remember, even though something may be dominant, it's not always more common. So all of us have 5 fingers, right? Is there anybody that has 6 fingers? If you do, then that's pretty cool. But most of us have 5 fingers, even though having 6 fingers is dominant. All right, so make sure you're back into this Google assignment. What we're going to do is you're going to list 3 dominant traits that you have and 3 recessive traits that you have. All right, so if I have something, let's look at eye color. All right, this is what I talked about earlier. I told you that brown eyes are dominant, and then anything other than brown eyes is recessive. I'm going to zoom in real quick. All right, so I have blue eyes. All right, so that is a recessive trait for eye color. So I'm going to say blue eyes, and then in parentheses, I'm just going to say non-brown eyes. Now, if you have brown eyes, you can put that in your dominant trait. But if you have anything other than brown eyes, you can put that for one of your recessive traits. Katie, I was asking that question in one of my other classes too. I don't know. If you look in this top one, I know hair color is not in there, but I think that it means that it's hybrid. Like you have dominant, recessive, and hybrid. We're not really going to look too much at hybrid, but I think that it's hybrid. I'm not exactly sure. Emerson, I wouldn't count Hazel as brown. All right, so if you have anything other than brown eyes, that is a recessive trait. If I wanted to put something for a dominant trait, you have the position of your eyebrows. So they're either not connected or connected. So I'm going to say eyebrows not connected. All right. So just use both of these tables here to help you figure out 3 recessive traits and 3 dominant traits that you have. I'm going to fill out my own while you guys are filling out yours.
What is earlobe attachment?
Earlobe attachment is like how your ears are attached to your to the side of your face or your head. And so if they're like unattached, it means something with like it droops. So they don't have it up here to actually show it, but it's something where it either droops or it's like straight to your ear.
What is a widow's peak?
Widow's peak is somebody that had like it. I'm going to show you it because somebody asked this last class, in one of my other classes actually. It's harder to explain. I might as well just show you it. So it's somebody that has their hair. It's their hairline. So this guy's hairline is like super, like he's got a widow's peak for sure, but it goes down in like a V. All right, and so this one's not. This one right here is not as seen, or you can't see it as well. But she's got like a little V right here. All right, so you either have a widow's peak or you have just a straight hairline. So a widow's peak is dominant, and a straight hairline would be recessive. So while I'm filling mine out, make sure you are filling yours out. All right, take about 30 more seconds. It shouldn't take you too long. Make sure you have 3 listed for each. All right, finish that up. We're going to move on to the next and last thing that we're going to look at. All right, so we're going to learn a little bit about Mendel's pea plants. So this helped us understand a little bit more about genetics, and it's going to go into some Punnett squares a little bit. These 6 questions you guys will answer after the video. If you need to watch the video again, it is linked, so you can always press on that. Sometimes the narrator goes a little bit fast and it's hard to keep up with it. So if you want to go back and watch the video on your own, I probably would advise doing that. All right, so let's look at these 6 questions real quick. All right, first question talks about alleles. So what do they represent? We talked about alleles a little bit a few weeks ago. If you need to use Amplify to help you out, if you just want to go into this video, it will help you answer this question. So what do they represent? The next 2 questions talk about heterozygous and homozygous. I hope we are not confused when it comes to homozygous and heterozygous, because those were 2 of our vocab words and they were part of some key concepts. Right? The next 2 questions talk about genotype and phenotype. It talks about it a tiny bit in this video. It doesn't go over it too much, but it hits on it real quick. If you need help with what a genotype and a phenotype is, I would advise maybe looking it up on Google to help you out. All right, the video does hit on it, but if you want to understand it just a little bit more, you can go into the Google. All right, we'll talk about genotype and phenotype a little bit more tomorrow. And then we will also talk more about Punnett squares. We'll get some Punnett square practice as well. So your question here about Punnett squares is, what do they help with? So what do Punnett squares help with? All right, those are your 6 questions we're going to answer after this video. So I'm going to show this video, and then you guys will answer those questions, and we will get out of here.
These days, scientists know how you inherit characteristics from genes. They're able to calculate probabilities of having a specific trait or getting a genetic disease according to the information they have from the parents and the family history. But how is this possible? To understand how traits pass from one living being to its descendants, we need to go back in time to the 19th century and a man named Gregor Mendel. Mendel was an Austrian monk and biologist who loved to work with plants. By breeding the pea plants he was growing in the monastery's garden, he discovered the principles that rule heredity. And one of the most classic examples Mendel combined a purebred yellow-seeded plant with a purebred green-seeded plant, and he got only yellow seeds. He called the yellow color trait the dominant one because it was expressed in all the new seeds. Then he let the new yellow-seeded hybrid plants self-fertilize, and in this second generation he got both yellow and green seeds, which meant that the green trait had been hidden by the dominant yellow. He called this hidden trait the recessive trait. From those results, Mendel inferred that each trait depends on a pair of factors, one of them coming from the mother and the other from the father. Now we know that these factors are called alleles and represent the different variations of a gene. Depending on which type of allele Mendel found in each seed, we can have what we call a homozygous pea, where both alleles are identical, and what we call a heterozygous pea, when the two alleles are different. This combination of alleles is known as genotype, and its result, being yellow or green, is called phenotype. To clearly visualize how alleles are distributed amongst descendants, we can use a diagram called the Punnett square. You just place the different alleles on both axes, and then you figure out the possible combinations. Let's look at Mendel's peas, for example. Let's write the dominant yellow allele as an uppercase Y, and the recessive green allele as a lowercase y. The uppercase Y always overpowers its lowercase friend, so the only time you get green babies is if you have two lowercase y's. In Mendel's first generation, the yellow homozygous pea mom will give each pea kid a yellow dominant allele, and the green homozygous pea dad will give a green recessive allele, so all the pea kids will be yellow heterozygous. Then, in the second generation, where the two heterozygous kids marry, their babies could have any of the three possible genotypes, showing the two possible phenotypes in a 3-to-1 proportion. But even peas have a lot of characteristics. For example, besides being yellow or green, peas may be round or wrinkled. So we could have all these possible combinations: round yellow peas, round green peas, wrinkled yellow peas, and wrinkled green peas. To calculate the proportions for each genotype and phenotype, we can use a Punnett square too. Of course, this will make it a little more complex. And lots of things are more complicated than peas, like, say, people. These days, scientists know a lot more about genetics and heredity, and there are many other ways in which some characteristics are inherited, but it all started with Mendel and his peas.
I legit didn't get any of those questions, Allison.
No, I wouldn't. From just watching it that one time, I wouldn't try to answer those questions. You're gonna need to go back and probably look at the video again and stop it when you want to answer the question. Okay. It'd be a lot easier when you're able to stop it and really answer those questions. So I would advise going back into that video and answering those questions when you pause the video at that point. Okay. It's only about a 3-minute video, so it shouldn't take you very long. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? This is the only other thing that I have for you guys today. If you have questions, please ask. If you did not get your um, test in, most of you guys have. There's only a few that have not. If you haven't gotten that test in, make sure you do, because I've already posted grades. But tonight is the very, very last night that I can accept any of those tests. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any questions. These are the only 6 questions that you need to answer, and then turn in this Google assignment on Canvas. Okay. All right, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Monday.
Wait, Shanks, can I study for 7 hour recorder?
Yeah, you guys start a new 7th hour, so you won't be in mine.
Yes.
Mhm.
Wait,